Okay, here with, after a long time, a foreigner. Well, he's desi looking, but he's, as far as I've done a little research, Shamal is the right way to say it?
Correct. Absolutely correct. Yeah.
Shamal, I have a couple of Shamal friends, Gujarati stock here in Mumbai. Vallabhjee, I presume, is somewhat the same. But you're a South African. Let's get that out of the way first.
Absolutely correct. Yeah, I was born in South
Durban
Africa.
born, which is a lot of desi South African, Indian South Africans.
The largest population of Indians outside India
Is
in
it?
Durban, yeah, statistically.
Wow, that's excellent. You've got a mini India there. They must hate us. I've been to Durban long ago.
Yeah.
20 years have passed since Cape Town and Durban. But we had a young lady called Kaniz who's also from just outside Durban. She's a stand-up comedian. I don't know if you've heard
I know
of her.
Kaniz very well.
Oh, excellent,
Yeah.
excellent. So that I know two from the same sort of area. That's great.
There's a good chance if you meet an Indian, there's a high probability they're from that area.
Yeah, amazing. Guys like Hashim Amla, who also Desi origin, who played for South Africa.
Hashim Amla was my neighbor. We lived
Hey,
on
this
the
is the typical Indian story.
We lived
where
on the
if you
same
take a
road.
famous name, Amitabh Bachchan, I grew up with him.
Yeah,
Come
true.
on, Shamal. You're
It's
selling
true.
that to me now.
Yeah.
I need proof.
Hashim and I, his brother actually, Ahmed Amla, was in the same class as me. And we both played cricket. We
What are you
played for the province, and then we went on to play South African universities together. And
You played
and
high-grade cricket?
I played South African universities. I played state level, under 19. And then I was the high performance coach with the Nashua Dolphins. And Ahmed was the captain and the player,
Wow.
Hashim's older brother.
Yeah.
And we grew up literally 50 meters away from each other. And when we were playing schoolboy cricket, our parents used to have a carpool. I used to either go with him or he'd come with me, and one was to drop and one was to pick up.
Wow.
And
So the
stuff
Hashim
like that.
Amla success story has a Vallabhjee bit to it as well.
I don't know if that. I mean, and then Hashim later on.
Did you know he was that good but growing up?
Hashim, if you speak to coaches at that era, Ahmed Amla was a phenomenally better.
The elder one.
The elder one was way more talented as a
Yeah.
cricketer. He was phenomenal. He was massive, powerful striker of the ball. Hashim had a flamboyance to him that most of the coaches actually didn't know how to coach. I'll be very honest with this. If you go back to 2002, 2003, when he was just breaking into the scene, every commentator was saying he's too wristy, he's trying to flick the ball from off stump, he's going to get out LBW, his hands twirl too much, all of these things, and everyone was trying to make him very traditional, very MCC style.
Yeah.
And but his dominance was his flamboyance, his wristiness, and
And great to watch. Almost like a left-hander batting right-handed.
He was
Just
phenomenal.
Fabulous. And what a talent in the end. I mean, his records speak for itself.
He is, Hashim is one of those cricketers that you have some cricketers who their persona is bigger than their statistics.
Is it?
And you have someone like Hashim Amla who is. His statistics are phenomenal, but yet he gets the raw end of the deal in
'Cause he's
selection a
low-key.
lot because he's low key.
Yeah.
Or they
So nice, so refreshing to have a low-key cricketer. A guy who just quietly sits there, does his thing and goes home.
For sure.
I've never heard of those guys.
Hashim was he was always thought of a test player. And I remember in ODI, there was a time when outside Virat Kohli to the first 1,000 runs.
For finishing games,
Yes, and Viv Richards in getting to, I think, 8,000 runs.
Yeah.
Hashim Amla held the record of being the fastest player to get to 2,000, 3,000, 4,000, 5,000, 6,000 runs.
God, you can see the Indian, the Desi in him. Getting
and
his
it's
numbers
like,
right.
It was ridiculous, and no one would even say this or even talk about
Unsung
it.
hero, you spot on. I think that's the way you can. But I think, to be fair, everybody appreciates him. He's one of those
he's
guys.
phenomenal.
It's like everybody loves Raymond. Everybody loves Hashim. He's not the kind of guy that most people
Because
who follow the game.
in the locker room, he's so peaceful, so
Yeah,
calm.
yeah.
He's so supportive. He's always, supporting, helping everyone. He would bat for an hour, 2 hours. He'd take balls and throw to someone else, help them. He's
Are you
surrounded.
still in touch?
So I am in touch. I'm in touch with most of the players.
You said you coached the Dolphins team, which
The Dolphins team. So I was with Dolphins from literally 97 to 99, and then I came back in 2003 to 2007. So
Okay.
we had Sean Pollock, John T. Rhodes, Hashim Amla, Ahmed
Nice.
Amla.
Yeah.
Andrew Hudson, Pat Simcox, Errol Stewart. We had
Wow,
some
some of the
legends.
best sledgers the world has ever seen.
Yeah. It
All
was-
right, this is the Shamal story. This is not the Pat Simcox and Hashim Amla story. Let's go back. Very interesting facts that we've learned about you is that, of course, psychologist.
Yes.
Which is the main thing, and he's very much in the global sports setup. We'll get to that. It's a little complicated. We'll explain all that. But I found a very interesting thing. You were also a monk.
Yeah.
So just take us through that early part of your career and how did you become a monk? Went to the Hare Krishna sort of mission and then.
Yes, it's an interesting story because, growing up as an Indian in South Africa, I wanted to play cricket. I think all Indians anywhere in the world, they want to play cricket.
Yeah.
And but I grew up during what was the apartheid era, so it was institutional.
right.
Yeah, it was
19
institutional segregation of people of color. So it was 90s,
Yeah.
early 90s, mid 80s. That was when I was really playing and stuff like that. And there was no opportunity for people of color, Ahmed included. That's the reason why, Ahmed really.
So you guys didn't play with the, what's the politically right word? The fair skinned guys.
No, we didn't. They didn't. There was something called a quota system, which means you had to be when South Africa got freedom in 1994.
Yeah.
There was a quota system that got in place, which meant one person of color in the
Oh,
national
yeah.
teams.
They still have that, don't
Yeah.
they? The four
now
colored
it's,
players.
Yeah, it's about 6 right now. But that one was not even a person, a colored or an Indian. They were looking for a black African. So you had the likes of Mackay Ntini, who took it for a decade, was in that position. Then there was a controversy of everyone saying Herschel Gibbs is a person of color, even though he grew up in a predominantly white area and went to, I think, Rondebosch
I mean,
Boys.
it's such a common Indian name, Gibbs.
So, and
What's the story? Why was he a person of color? He's not a person of color.
he's a person of color because I think he has, I think one of his parents is a colored, but his entire upbringing was not equated to that of a person of color from there. So that was a controversy, and the United Cricket Board at that stage used that for the longest time. So anyway, I grew up in this apartheid era, and then I realized, but when I turned 18,
Sorry
I
to
can't
interrupt.
play.
Did you experience any racism?
Lots.
I'm saying it like it's fun, but obviously it's
No,
not.
there was a lot of racism.
So what? Just give us a story.
An
Because people
example
have
of-
no idea how close to this generation that was. I mean, it's just yesterday.
It was yesterday. It was, for example, if you're playing in certain club games, you would go into. Sometimes you're not allowed in the locker room. You have to change outside. Then
What? Like they stop you?
yeah. You just like they don't give you a locker room to change in and stuff like that. That was one of
But they're
the.
letting you play.
You are playing. You're a player.
And then when you go back to the room or the dressing room,
There is no dressing room. You're changing in your car or under the
man,
tree.
really?
Your locker room.
Seriously?
That was the first one. The second thing was a little bit more subtle. Was that if you're a person of color, when you're playing against clubs, especially if they had a white bowler who was a fast bowler or something, they weren't trying to get you out. They were trying to hurt you. So the game wasn't about getting you out. The game was about hurting you physically.
it wouldn't hurt the white batsman.
Nah,
So when a colored batsman comes, it hurt him.
yeah, correct.
Human nature is so beautiful.
So this was, it played out, like I said, in very, very subtle ways. And then there was a quota system of who got selected to play. And all of this was, now, for me to get to that stage, I had a lot of arguments with my parents. They knew what was coming, so they tried to steer me away from that. And I obviously was very persistent, so I forced it. And when I realized that these opportunities are not going to really manifest, I didn't know what to do. So because I grew up in a very spiritual family, I went and just drove one afternoon and stayed in
But
the
what would your
temple.
parents say anyway? If the environment was like that, what could they do?
They couldn't do anything, but they didn't want me to spend as much time focusing on sport. They wanted me to be a pharmacist or a doctor or something like that,
Right.
So they're
But
saying
that is more like the Indian way.
It is the
It's
Indian
not
way.
about the racism per se. I'm thinking, did you ever complain to your dad? I come back and say this.
I never ever said anything because they were not in a position to do anything or even understand.
Yeah.
I grew up in an Indian community. They never stepped out of that community. They don't even know what the reality of that is, And quite honestly, up until I turned like 18, I didn't even know it until I started playing cricket.
So your friends were all colored people. There was no other races.
Predominantly Indians because I went to an Indian school. I
Right.
grew up in an Indian community. But when I started playing cricket, like Ahmed and myself were the first people who were really starting to get exposed to, because you went
Other
and started
societies.
playing
Yeah,
in white playing schools, white against white clubs. We then moved. We got good enough to play in a completely different
But weren't
Premier
there
League.
some nice stories as well? Weren't there some more welcoming people as well? Or
I mean, there were obviously definitely people who were kind and people who were very, very supportive and things like that. And you saw the energy slowly change over time, you know. And the way it changed was everything changes from the political sphere. So you got the Indians who were starting to hold positions in board of directors at the cricket level or chairman of selectors. And then everything sort of became a little softer at the edges as such, you know.
yeah, we kept hearing Indian names. What was the guy's name? Gulam something.
Ghulam Bodhi.
Yeah, exactly. So there were names that was. I like that fact. You know that you could see the names coming through, which meant that the diaspora was also coming through in a sense.
Oh, yeah. Ghulam was Indian. He was born in Ahmedabad and he moved across to India. Then he had a South African passport. He played there. We have phenomenal talent. You know, Shamsi right now is also there. So there are a lot of...
Shamsi is also Indian, right?
Yes,
By descent.
yeah.
Crazy guy. Great fun.
Great,
I think he's the kind of guy who puts bums on seats, you know.
Yeah.
You want to watch that guy.
Good
because-
energy.
Good energy, and you just watch him. He doesn't have to be. If he's fielding, he does something stupid.
Yeah,
You know, he's silly and he's
No,
a captivating guy.
It's you know, and that's the thing about South African sport in general. You look at our football team, our rugby team, our cricket team. They're very bubbly, very energetic because that's cultural. Because in schools in South Africa, where we
Sport is
breed
big,
athletes, sport is played, but you have to earn the right to play the sport by being fit. You don't just get given a ball. You know, you have to earn the right to be there and to play with that ball. So there's that culture of movement, that culture of fitness is very big.
It's amazing you say that because one of your close friends in Mumbai is Cyrus, my colleague, who's one of the least athletic human beings I've ever met.
He's
His
trying.
legs are so wide, I mean no racism by this, that he's never worn short pants. You know, one day when we had to shoot something and he was in shorts, I was like, what's this? They've never exposed themselves to the sun. Like, man,
Saukar is trying. He's in the gym every day now.
but what does he do in the gym?
I don't know.
He's always on the phone. His cardio is, I'll just take this call, and off he goes. Yeah. All right, let's not digress. Let's talk about you. The thing is, it's so fascinating your life and where you come from that we have to do a separate podcast on that. Let's talk about you.
Yeah.
Going back to the Hare Krishna thing,
Yeah.
I'm just thinking, a young man growing up in the 80s and 90s kind of thingy. You said you come from a spiritual background, so that
Yeah.
probably makes sense. But right in the middle, you're trying to figure out what you're doing with your life. You go to the
Yeah, I just took a pause because, and it wasn't an intended pause. I just, you know, because I knew everyone at the temple, I was part of that ecosystem and culture. It wasn't like
Yeah.
I made a plan to go in there. I knew everyone there. So I went. It was very easy. I drove after work.
spontaneously this happened.
Yeah, from Kingsmead, I went in the morning to work. At the end of the day, I just decided to go to the temple. I used to do that very regularly. But
Right.
after 2 hours, I had to drive back home. That particular day, I decided, hey, let me just stay here. And then the second day I stayed, and the third day I stayed. I knew everyone so well that there was always a room for me at the temple.
Yeah.
And then I was really enjoying it because what I started to enjoy was there was a tranquility and nobody knew who I was and nobody was talking cricket and there was no racism. Everything was around, it was around spirituality, around enlightenment. Everyone was very kind.
Did you drink alcohol?
I used
Before
to at
that,
that stage,
yeah.
but when I went there,
So what happened to that side? I'm saying, if you're a young man, you drink alcohol, you go
Yeah.
out at night, etc.
you know, in the temple, we had to abide by those rules. Those rules of no alcohol, no sex, no gambling, no drugs.
No sex.
Yeah, those were
ये
the four.
कैसा cult है भाई?
Yeah, those are the four main rules.
How old were you?
I was at that stage. I was probably 2003. I was about 23.
Bro, I can't believe it.
Yeah.
23. You sounded like you're 53.
Yeah.
Normally, I can't believe a 23-year-old would just, and it just happened like that. You just went one day and you stayed back,
I just went and stayed back.
and you
because-
let go of the life of the fast life and all
And
that.
then no, but for the longest time, I was doing both. I was coaching and working with the athletes,
Yeah.
right? But I was living full time in the temple and abiding by that lifestyle. So because of the way I moved in to the temple, you know, I had a few spiritual masters, a few guides. They understood very well that, you know, I'm not ready to fully leave that world. I don't want to become a monk. I'm in a phase of transition. So they supported me through that praise. They said, hey, you know what? Go and work. Just go in the morning, eat your food. When you finish, come back here. You know, get involved in whatever you want to. The process for me getting involved was very gentle. And even after a while when I was not working with the cricket team and I was staying at the temple, They even allowed me. I was the head performance coach with the South African Davis Cup team, which played 2 to 3 ties a year. We're gone for about a week.
This is pre-Wayne Ferreira?
This was post Wayne Ferreira.
Okay.
Kevin Anderson.
Kevin Anderson.
Yeah. Isaac van der Merwe, and we had a few other guys. So,
but how does it work? Because you're not like a monk, and you're still allowed to be a non-monk.
Well, I wasn't really a non-monk. I was just because one of the things that the temple was very, very keen on. I grew up in an era when people were seeing temples and spirituality as an escape from realism. They're like, people can't make it in the real world. That's why they're choosing the path of spirituality. So the temple were very forthcoming and conscious about getting people and promoting their careers because they wanted to show to the world that this person chooses to be here, not because he can't be successful there, but because he can be successful there, but this is a very conscious choice. And because that was front and center with the agenda, they were very supportive with a lot of people's careers, allowing them to sort of work, manage businesses, do all of that, but still live a very monastic life in terms of the food you eat, the rules, how you chant, taking spiritual association with people, and growing that ecosystem in there. So,
but still, 23 is that age where, you're least spiritual, I would think. So it's amazing that you found that.
Yeah. I mean, it was, like I said, I credit the going there to my family because I grew up in a very spiritual family. It was, 100 years of, my grandfather's a preacher. I grew up hearing these stories. It was part and parcel of my upbringing. And so
there was a call.
It was very natural. It wasn't difficult for me to.
It also sounds like a very sometimes by not luring you get lured. You know how it is?
Yeah, literally.
Because there's no forcing. There's no.
That's exactly.
Somewhat jisko jaisa, what we say in Hindi kind of philosophy. Yeah, you come, do what you want, kind of thing, and then you sort of. I think that's the best. That's what I'm trying to do with the podcast, Shayamal. I'm just trying to get people to watch, but not forcing them. No, if you want to watch, that kind of thing. But let's move on a little bit. So you're doing this, and then you continued. You said Davis Cup team.
Davis Cup team.
You're practicing psychologist by now.
Yes. I'm a performance psychologist.
And it's a world where suddenly sports psychologist is a very, very important part of the entire works.
The temple was pivotal for me because it taught me the importance of I pivoted. My first degree at university was sports science, where I was looking at muscle physiology, biomechanics, everything body related. It was my time in the temple. It was those 2 hours of morning meditation. It was that stillness that made me realize, what, maybe there's another frontier to be tapping here. And that's when I actually went and started studying psychology.
The mind-body connection.
Yeah, exactly.
My uncle Aristotle came up with that, if I remember, or Plato, one of them. Yeah. The fact that you can't separate mind and body.
You cannot.
People think they can.
And one of the professors in a very famous South African university, his name is Tim Noakes. He came up with a theory called the central governor theory, which speaks about this relationship between, when you say you can't go anymore, is it the body that can't go? Is it the mind that's saying you can't go? And he disassociates mind from body. And it was, just to close on this here, having spent so much time studying these Vedic scriptures, because every morning the routine in the temple is wake up at 3 a.m.
So you speak Sanskrit?
I don't speak Sanskrit, no.
But you can quote the scriptures.
I can read the Bhagavad Gita, the Sanskrit shlokas. I understand it. I understand Hindi. I don't speak it very fluently.
But can we do the show in Sanskrit? Just to prove that we're not a hoax.
No, we can't do it in Sanskrit. I can't.
Damn it. Afrikaans?
Afrikaans I can speak.
Oh, you can?
Yeah.
How did you speak Afrikaans if you guys were in
Because
basic
it was a second language in school.
You learned it formally.
I learned it in school.
I heard Hashim talking in Afrikaans once in an interview. And I was quite stunned. But obviously, everybody picked up languages.
You had no choice.
Yeah.
Hashim, Ahmed, all of us. Now, South Africa has 11 official languages. Back in the day, there were only 2.
Zulu, Xhosa.
Yeah, Zulu, Xhosa, I don't know.
English,
Afrikaans. Xhosa.
Indian, Gujarati or Tamil or one of these?
I think there's Hindi is now in there.
Yeah.
There may be Tamil. Yeah. There's 11 based on all the diaspora.
Rainbow Nation.
Exactly, 100%.
They're going to go the wrong way, because everybody will want their language. And you'll be forced to learn 60 languages the third generation from now.
That's what's happening.
It's how the right goes left and the left goes right.
Absolutely.
And you just lose sort of, the mentality just goes perverse.
For sure. Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's exactly what's happening currently in the country.
Sorry, we'll keep digressing because I've got ADD here. I'm still trying to track your story, which is very important.
So I'll come
unique.
back.
Yeah.
It was unique in that. So it was the temple that helped me understand the importance of psychology. I went and studied it because I understood now
Where?
the power of the mind. I did my first degree at the University of Hertfordshire in the UK. The second one was psychology.
Right.
This was back in 2007. Straight after that time in the temple, I started there. And then I did another master's in organizational psychology out of Adler School, Chicago School of Psychology, a little bit later on.
I feel really bad because in my podcast studio, everybody here is basically either matric or little less than that.
No.
You're just talking of degrees like Bradman hitting centuries or something.
No.
Go ahead.
It's just a curiosity to learn.
Not to be racist, but it's an Indian thing as well. We have that academic sort of, when we do the academics, we go all the way.
I don't know. For me, I credit the going all the way to the apartheid. I said the apartheid did a lot of things to me, which was in terms of suppression. But the one thing it did for those who rose above was it instilled in you a work ethic that is second to none. So
like you're trying to prove to the world that you're so much better
You
by
have
doing
to
this.
work harder than everyone else.
Right.
Even I remember having a conversation where one very, very famous cricketer was a national coach. And I was sitting in a room.
Guess.
I was working with the South African High Performance Unit, which was, we had 24 of the country's most promising talent. When I was working in there, we had Hashim Amla, Paul Harris, JP Duminy, AB de Villiers, Mornay Morkel. All of these guys were in that batch.
Yeah.
We were grooming. They hadn't even made debuts as yet. Okay, and I remember that coach is telling Hashim, he's talking to him, he says, if you want to play for the national team, you got to average 50. And we're looking at the statistic, and that said Jacques Kallis, who'd already played for a decade, was averaging 30. Jacques Kallis barely even scored 100 run in his first 6 innings. You looked at all of the opening batsmen were not even averaging. Herschel Gibbs was averaging 27. And we asked him, why is the bar so high for
Hashim?
Yeah, I said, why is the bar so high? And he says, no. He says, this is just going to establish you. He said, yeah, but I can be established with the same baseline as everyone else, But
is he trying to help you by saying you got to go above just to make sure you know?
No, I don't know if
or
it's
is
helping.
This being factual?
It's not. I don't even think it's being factual. I think it was so subconscious in the double standards that it just translated in the language in every shape and form. No.
Come on. I'm sure we can figure this out.
You can definitely figure it out. This was happening. This was a conversation that happened. Quite honestly, it's not hard to figure out. The coach at the time was Gary Kirsten. He was the one who was working. We were working with the national team.
Yeah.
And
he's now going to be working with Pakistan.
He's working with Pakistan.
So all the races in the world covered.
So this was what was happening, and we had to, over the course of time, really break down these conversations, understand, reestablish what was neutral, what was normal, and through this whole journey, I realized, and the spirituality really helped me with this. When I came out of the temple and when I went in the temple, I was very, very angry at the apartheid. I thought everything was wrong. The first thing it taught me was it raised my work ethic, Cyrus. I realized I had to work harder, and I accepted that, and then it built in me, it cultivated in me this beautiful work ethic. So I tell people, when I come into a room or I join a team, I may not start off the smartest, but I'm definitely the hardest worker. That I can guarantee you. The second thing that I realized through this whole journey with spirituality was that the generation of Caucasian white that I was interacting with in South Africa was as much a victim as I was. And what do I mean by this? I meant that their upbringing, you're a byproduct of your upbringing. He was 5 generations of listening to...
I get that. That's very acceptable.
So I understood that. I said, hey, you know what? I can't take 5 generations of my trauma and expect him to rectify it. It's a journey. We have to handhold each other through this journey of changing our language, of learning, of being more accepting, And that just changed the entire way in which I actually coached and ran
So instead
teams.
of aggression, you get a more
it was more compassion,
inclusive
more
sort of thinking that comes out of it.
And that was
I
the
wish I
last
could do this with my marriage, sometimes. You need to talk to us individually.
But inclusion is the word, I got to say. So it was just the most powerful for me because the apartheid excluded people. And sport should have been very inclusive.
That's the one binding fiber.
That was the one thing. And that was that's been the fuel in me for 20 years, was that to try to create things that empower athletes at different levels to make them feel more included.
And what we've missed out here, and we must bring out on a more serious note, is the fact that as a Desi, I'm using the word Desi, I don't know whether South Africans would use that word, but people like us who are born and bred there, you miss out as a young man on girls of different races.
Yes.
Which is not fair. That's not cricket.
This is true.
It's true.
We had a massive complex
Yeah.
when I, at least me, for example, when I was young and traveling with the team and going out and partying and stuff like that, massive complex with who you would speak to. You would, you'd go to a club and you're looking for the one Indian girl in the whole club.
Oh man, don't tell me that. This is a sad.
But it takes time to break that. I mean, right?
UK must have been a whole different culture for you.
It was a massive shock.
Everybody just
massive shock. Just traveling in 2007 when my exposure to the world wasn't through cricket. It was actually in 2007. Mahesh Bhupari and the Indian Davis Cup team hired me. That's why I came to India.
Wow.
That's when I left the temple. I got this call and they said, hey, do you want to come work with us? I came.
You worked with the South African Davis Cup team.
I worked with the South African Davis Cup team. That's how they knew me.
Word got around.
The word got around. That's how so they phoned me. I said, perfect. I came. I thought India is great. I'm in the temple. I'm coming to a spiritual country, which is another shock when I landed here.
You'd come to India as a kid here and there to visit family?
No,
nothing?
2007 was my first time.
You never came as a child? For the normal pilgrimage to meet the
zero
village elders and all?
Nothing.
None of that?
None of that.
So do you trace your roots? Do you have any idea?
Our roots are, I have family in Surat, Rajkot.
But is there land and all that?
There's land, there's family, there's all of them there. I don't go too often. I don't know most of them. But
they suddenly tell you there's no land. Welcome.
Exactly.
Land? What land?
What land are you talking about?
No, took the land.
This is what I don't want to get into. But so I came in 2007 and traveling with Mahesh is a completely different world because now tennis, you're playing across the world.
Yeah, and all the rich people of the world.
Rich people, great countries, countries I would never even have, cricket's not even played. Like, Poland and
Croatia
Sweden and Croatia and things like that. Cricketers up to today, I've never even seen those countries.
No.
So that's what Mahesh and the tennis tour did for me. They really gave me exposure on another level.
Yeah. Wait, again, probably a little unsung hero, Mahesh. What a fantastic doubles player he was.
Oh, he's
and for such a long period of time.
Phenomenal.
Because Rohan Bopanna is doing so well now in his 70s. But there's one thing you got to say about our Indian doubles teams. Because I grew up in the Vijay Amritraj era and all.
Yeah.
We always had these great singles guys around the corner, the Krishnans, father and son. And then suddenly you go to this Leander Pace, Mahesh Bhupati. Sadly, that didn't work out for a long period of time. But when it did, when we were much younger and watching those two guys, they were the crack team.
Man, in 2007, when I started traveling, Mahesh was playing with someone called Mark Knowles. Him and Lee.
South African guy.
Mark Knowles was from
British.
the Bahamas.
Okay.
Huh. And those two guys, it was like tension in the locker room. Mahesh and Leander, you're either speaking to one or you were not speaking. And then
you'd pick a side.
You had to pick a side. Oops. But there was a lot of people in the locker room trying to get them together because I remember, everyone, there was pools of people who were sad that they weren't together, and there were a few players who were really happy because if they were together, they were unstoppable, as a force, and that's. And it was really, really, really interesting. It was sad for the country that they weren't together, but both of them are supremely talented.
I'll ask you as a psychologist, sorry to interrupt, but I read Steve Waugh's, I don't want to show off, Steve Waugh's book, Outside My Comfort Zone, where he spoke that why do people think that 15 players, I'm taking cricket, in a squad can get along, 15 males? Or in rugby, 20, 25 males, or in football, squads of 25, 30, whatever they are. Or even in tennis, why do you expect people, a Davis Cup squad, to all get along? People are different. They are not going to get along, but they have to play together as a team. Is that a true, correlation there?
I mean, in a cricket team, you can understand the squad is 16 to 20 odd players. You can understand 20
egos involved in all this.
But in tennis, when you're playing, you have one doubles partner. You're eating food with him.
That's true.
You're traveling with him.
Yeah.
You're playing everything. But I have seen these guys win games
without talking,
without saying a word to each other.
See, marriage is hard.
It's nuts. I've literally seen them win a game where they've not said a word to each other. They came to like even the chest bump was at a good moment. Sometimes they would just come, tuck, 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 done.
And none of that talking and all.
I mean, they'll show their signs about where to serve, but that was all. That was all the communication.
One guy goes like that, or the other guy goes here.
But it was really funny because both of them don't. they're not very fluent in Hindi. They don't speak Hindi.
No, they aren't.
They're
Yeah.
terrible, right? You
Yeah.
know, I'm terrible with Hindi.
Yeah.
But when they're communicating and they want to say something
Who
to
writes
each
the
other,
other guy doesn't hear.
yeah, so that they can't speak English because their opponents know
Yeah,
it.
yeah.
So they would attempt Hindi. And, you know, I remember like when Leander, it's the only one that I remember, Leander will tell Heshi, if he's telling him, I want you to hit a lob, right? He'll say, Mundi ka upar chalo. you know? You know? And I don't even know Hindi, but this doesn't sound right.
Mundi ko upar chalo. We have to take a quick break and come back, get back into his life. So it's one podcast won't do justice to you. It won't be fair. I mean, we keep digressing to all the sporting icons that you worked with and helped. I hope they paid well.
Okay.
It's a government thing. Davis Cup would be government, right? Who pays?
Yeah. Government.
Tennis Federation, government.
Government, Davis Cup was pro bono. Everything else.
Huh? What kind of Indian are you? You're a monk at 23. You do work for free. Yeah, amazing story. All right. We'll come back in a second. Stay where you are.
Hey, it's been another great week on the IVM Podcasts Network. On The Habit Coach, Ashton is joined by Konkana Bakshi, an etiquette and image consultant. They delve into the world of business etiquette, social manners, and personal grooming skills. On Has It Aged Well, myself Abbas and my co-host Urjita are joined by screenwriter and actor Aseem Chandavar to talk about Tere Naam from 2003. Listen in to hear us geek about Salman's memorable hairstyle, why this film represents a bygone era, and the late great Satish Kaushik's filmography. Folks, if you like our shows, spread the word, tell your friends, and don't forget to rate and review them wherever you're listening to them. Follow us on social media. We are IVM Podcasts on Twitter, Facebook, Instagram, and LinkedIn. You'll also find all our shows on YouTube at youtube.com/IVM Podcasts. And finally, we would like to thank our sponsors this week: Omidyar Network India, IDFC First Bank, and ICICI Prudential Mutual Fund. Thank you for making this possible.
All right, welcome back. Shayamal is still with us. He's a psychologist. Why do they have that P in psychology?
I have no idea.
Didn't you ask that of your teachers?
Probably some French guy wrote it because
Really? Out of anger, he's I'll just put P there. You know?
yeah.
That's the first stumbling block. Why do a subject
Why
which
is it-
doesn't make sense?
For sure. It's like French, you know. My partner is French and it's probably the hardest language to learn because
speak it.
I can't because every time I read
You
it.
all are like Hesh and
we
Leander.
like Hessian, in terms of communication. Yeah, for sure. Literally, that's what it is. It's probably one of the toughest languages to speak because you can't read it and learn it. You know,
It's English script, right?
it is
it
English
won't make
script,
sense.
but
It
the
won't make-
spelling
yeah,
is
yeah, yeah.
completely different. Completely,
Yeah.
you know. And so I find it like supremely difficult. But yeah.
Okay, let's move back from college. We'll try and get linear again. So you became a monk. You became a monk.
Yes.
That's really, it's not a half-hearted thing. You're fully invested.
Yes.
You do the monk thing. You're still carrying on with helping sporting teams. But you're still a South African phenomenon.
Yes.
Then you go to UK and you do double masters and
Yeah.
triple masters. And then you start plying your trade outside. The Davis Cup team? Indian
Davis Cup team is where I started in 2007. You know, a large part of my studying was then started to be remote because I was traveling with athletes. I would go and spend weeks at colleges. But other than that, everything was remote. 2007, I started traveling full-time with the Davis Cup team and Mahesh on tour. That carried on from 2007 till the end of
So you were his personal psychologist thingy?
personal sports scientist traveling with him, psychology,
Okay,
everything,
everything,
I was managing.
all said and
So I worked with Rohan, Sanya, Mahesh, then all the players he worked with, Mark Knowles, Max Mirny. You know, did a little bit of work with Gail Monfields for a while in there.
The French
player. So that lasted. That ended towards the end of London
Sorry to
Olympics.
interrupt, but so do you have to talk to them on a daily basis when
Every
you do
day,
that?
every day,
It's
every
like
the
a
whole day.
life coach job. What is the
When you're traveling with a player, I mean, with Mahesh and stuff, he'd never hit a ball when I was not there. Literally.
Really?
Yeah. There was no practice that I was not at.
like a crutch?
You know, literally. You know, I was there at every practice because I used to also prepare his body, help him stretch, manage everything, get him ready. So anywhere he played, I would be there. Every single practice, before, after. Then we would, you know, break down the game, chat about the game with the coach. Scotty Davidoff was the coach who's currently even working with Rohan, and they've won all of this.
The coach is younger than the players. Rohan's going strong. Yeah.
Rohan is going super strong.
Unbelievable. What a
Yeah.
story. I felt so happy, I can't tell you, because
I-
I'm also aging. We all are.
Yeah.
And then when you see a senior guy doing well, I'm just, enough. Can't stand that the whole world belongs to the young. I hate that phrase, man.
I agree.
Yeah.
I absolutely agree.
Yeah.
And and Rohan's really one of the nicest people I know. I was telling someone recently on another podcast. I was telling them, the one thing I really admire about Rohan is we spend so much of time with him, and when things are not going well in a team setup on the tennis tour, it's a very, very natural thing for one of the guys to look outside for another player. It happens very, very quickly.
Oh, it's like cheating on your girlfriend or whatever.
You very quickly you're
It's
looking
a bit
for
mean,
someone.
though.
You are. Rohan's one of the people that, irrespective of what's happening, he's never having conversations on the side. He's always focused. He's always looking to bring in resources to help them get better. At every time, super fully committed to everything. And the reason why I'm really happy for him is for the better part of a decade, he really got a raw deal. He got a raw deal at the Olympics. Sanya was told that she can't play with him. She had to play with Leander.
Yeah, I remember this.
In the London Olympics, he always got...
He's like the stepbrother.
Exactly, with everything. And he's really taken on the big brother role beautifully in how he's mentoring everyone, how he's building up the academy, supporting, and the results are just stacking up for him. So it couldn't have happened to a nicer guy.
Let me digress for a second. I'm going to ask you as a psychologist. It's a little unfair question, but I want to ask you before I forget. What's your take on the Hardik Pandya, Rohit Sharma controversy and the way the crowds are booing and all that? Tell me as a psychologist, what's happening here?
I think the booing is not very kosher as such.
No, it's not. But why? Why the reaction? They believe that he's robbed the captaincy or something like that. What is the reason why people are disliking
There's a few different things. Firstly, one is, Rohit is a stalwart for Mumbai. He's done a lot. He's built that team.
And for India, he's well loved. There's no question.
Right, yeah. Now, the situation of Mumbai wanting Hardik back and him coming on the terms and conditions of him wanting to be a captain. To explain this whole situation, it's really important that, I'll connect it to my spirituality, which is very important. And, I tell everyone the first lesson I teach all athletes, Cyrus, no matter who I work with, whatever sport, is I quote them a verse from Bhagavad Gita, which I learned in the temple. Chapter 18, verse 14, in this conversation between Krishna and Arjuna, he's saying there are 5 things you need to be successful in life. The first thing is you need to be the right person for the job. The second thing is you need to be in the right place to do the job. The third is you need to have the right equipment and tools to execute. The fourth is you need to put in the right amount of hard work and effort to master those skills. And he says these 4 are in your control. And the fifth variable is an invisible energy, something that you didn't do anything about. You can call it luck, you can call it destiny, you can call it fate, something that you never did anything about that just brings it all together, that makes sure you're in the right place.
That's not your...
That's not in your control.
Yeah.
But it plays a role, whether you get a job, whether someone thought about you at the right time, how things happen. A drop catch in the field, you had nothing to do with the person dropped it. It's an invisible energy that's helped you.
Yeah, the fact that they were losing, they've lost 4 or 5 in a row. Yeah.
So Krishna tells Arjuna, the inability to recognize the fifth variable is called ego. Right? The ego is your inability to
despite all the ticks, the fifth one can scuttle the ship. You should accept that.
So for me, I think the problem with the Hardik Pandya Rohit Sharma saga starts off with not just him returning to Mumbai, but returning to Mumbai on the condition that I'll captain this team.
But that's not his fault, right? You just mentioned about the tennis players who drop the other guy because they want the better player or whatever.
No.
I mean, this is market point of view. I'm saying you're looking at your career going forward.
You're looking at your career going forward. But what are you looking at? You're looking at, I had a successful season with Gujarat Titans. We lost in one final.
I'll get
we
paid
won
more
a night
money.
final.
There's more glamour team.
Correct.
I'm playing devil's advocate.
Correct.
Yeah.
But you're only looking at everything from your point, not taking into consideration everything else.
Shayamal, you're asking for too much.
That played into that success.
But the footy guys do that.
Everybody does that.
I mean, they're looking at the bang for their buck that they're going to get out of the whole thing.
Everybody does that.
So,
but that's what I'm trying to say is that when you don't recognize it and you don't factor in the invisible energy, you set yourself up for failure.
So if he had done superbly and they had won 4 in a row, you think the booing would have stopped?
I think if he'd done well, I think the booing would not be there for sure, 100%, because the crowd is very tribal, is very cultish. They love Rohit, but what they love
But
more
how
is
do we become so judgmental that we decide that Hardik is the bad guy when we would have done the same thing if I'm offered 18 crores, 16 crores to change teams?
I'm not saying he's the bad guy.
I'm saying that from the crowd's perspective. I'm asking as a psychologist. I just don't understand why they overdo it. I understand it as a piece of comedy once in a while.
The question is, if Rohit was the captain and the results were exactly the same, would they be behaving in the same way?
No, they wouldn't boo him.
They wouldn't.
No.
The answer is they wouldn't.
They love that guy.
Everybody wants, it's victim mentality. Everybody wants to peg something on someone else. It's the inability to see all of the variables that creates this here. And the most empowering state, we look at the psychology of professional athletes is when we go inside the mind of a champion, we call it champion mindset. The first part of champion mindset is accepting accountability for every single thing. And, I'll tell you a very, very quick story. On the tennis tour, we used to see Rafa a lot. He was always there. Rafa tapes his fingers up. And a lot of times that taping is done by his physio. And he would get to the locker room about an hour and a half before practice or an hour and a half before his matches. And there's some days when he's there much, much earlier, like almost 2.5, 3 hours earlier. And sometimes you ask him, hey, what's happening? And he said, my taping didn't feel right. And so I've come a little earlier. And then he goes on to say, maybe I didn't give the physio enough time to get it right. Now, he's not saying the physio got it wrong because that's victim. I had nothing to do with it. He got it wrong.
Right.
But you're saying maybe I didn't give him enough time to get it. You're accepting full accountability. A champion takes accountability and ownership for every single
Guess
thing
who knows
in
the
their
Bhagavad
life.
Gita? It's good old Rafa.
So this was an interesting thing. And when you bring it back to Rohit and Hardik and everything, the question everyone needs to ask every single day is, what can I do to change this energy? People who are booing are feeling like they're the victims. If they truly felt a part and parcel of that team,
or they feel there's an injustice done to Rohit. I feel that could be
it could be an injustice done to it, but you're still distant. In spirituality, everything is looking at object and subject. Krishnamurti speaks about this. So, I am who I am because of who's looking at me. Like, I may be a person worthy of being here because of who's looking. To someone else, looking from a completely different point of view, I may not be worthy to be a guest or speaking, So object and subject is completely different. Right now, if you look at the object and subject, you got Rohit as an object, you got Hardik as an object, you got the crowd as a subject. The proximity between these two would determine the energy. If the crowd truly, truly felt part and parcel of this team, they truly felt like this is my team, right? Then the proximity would be a lot closer. You wouldn't be looking at who's good and who's bad. It would be looking at how do we rise up. Rising tide lifts all ships.
Yeah.
You understand? Because the proximity is so far, it's now you have the luxury of sights.
I think that's now asking our crowd to do a bit too much for them to
No,
do.
I'm not asking them to do anything. I'm saying psychology, from a psychology point of view.
So just going quickly, I know I want to talk about your life and we're running out of time. Just one last thing to that is, do you think, because Peterson and Gavaskar said that, and I mean, they are experienced cricketers, and Peterson himself has been through a little bit of that, because of his alliances with his old team, etc., etc. They said that, this booing and all can really get to you.
Correct.
Yet Hardik is smiling all the time, and so he's manifesting it in an opposite way, trying to act really cheerful and easygoing and calm. So is that like he's hiding the fact that he's actually quite upset and angry and bitter?
No, he's not hiding. What happens in sport? Athletes bounce back from situations very, very quickly. One is because the frequency of games is so high. So you have to really and truly cultivate the art of blocking things out or moving out first. Yeah. Right. And when someone is writing, for example, if a journalist is writing terrible stuff about you every single day, or a person saying something bad, it'll bother you the first time. It'll bother you the second time. Because of something called habituation, like you would like a thing continuously. The first time it's very exciting, but the 10th time it's not as exciting. Similarly, the first time it'll bother you, the 10th time it wouldn't. You'll cultivate an indifference towards all of this that's happening. in there. It would be then starting to bother everyone else besides him. Because he's cultivating a complete indifference. He's building a complete bubble around him that's isolating and secluding him from all of that.
Let me just take notes down because we have a lot of people ridiculing us on the podcast. I'm going to keep that in mind.
Yeah.
I'm going to have to read more scriptures, it looks like, to understand the world.
Yeah.
It's amazing that you use the scriptures and modern Western science in a sense, and you managed to bridge that gap or bring them together. I think it's probably unique.
I think it's what I realized when you spend a lot of time understanding spirituality is that nothing in modern psychology is new. Everything has just been given terminology and research data to validate it, but every single aspect of it, from altered consciousness to subconsciousness to how the brain works, every single thing is coded in spirituality in some way.
Yeah, but can you understand women? That's the question.
They tried to, and they did, I think.
You charge different rates for the more complex mind. Yeah. All right, let's football. You're right now actively, firstly, Shayamal is based in Barcelona.
Correct.
What a man of the world. He studied in UK, grew up in Durban, of Indian descent, went to Surat once, never again for some reason, and now in Barcelona.
Yeah.
So you want to tell us why Barcelona, and secondly, the connection with the football team?
So I'm based in Barcelona because my partner is French. We have European residency, and we moved there during COVID.
Yeah.
It was much easier to be there. It was a little more open, so that was the reason. The second reason is I'm on the faculty and teaching team at Stanford Business School for a module called the Neuroscience of Exemplary Leadership. And because of the time difference, it made sense to be in Europe. Otherwise, everything was happening wee hours of the morning in India. So that helped. That's why the base is Europe. And I found myself with the Indian national men's team as a head of performance psychology. It's been a year for me right now. The coach, Igor Stimac, I was introduced
under pressure all the time from what I read.
He's under a lot of pressure, yeah. He's under a lot of pressure right now.
Wouldn't that be the wrong way to help a coach, fulfill his obligations?
Yeah, he's trying. I know the country has done remarkably well. Last year in 2003, they won 3 tournaments back to back. We won 16 games in a row. And if you look at it statistically, our results, everyone's asking for his head. But if you look at
one loss against Afghanistan, and people made a big deal out of it.
Big deal of it. But we're playing much tougher opponents right now. The team is grooming, and what he's trying to do is he's trying to build the next tier of people. So if you look at the talent coming in, it's really, really and truly phenomenal. Besides Gurpreet, Sandesh and Sunil, we've got a whole nother batch of youngsters. Anwar Ali.
Ready to play in the national team, or you're saying in the fullness of time?
No, they are currently in the national team, but they'll be there for the next decade. As such, they will be the cream of the crop. So there's a lot of cultivation going on. And Igor brought me on because he understood the importance of psychology. He worked with a psychologist back in, I think, 1994 when he was with Derby County. So he's a big proponent of understanding this. And I came in because I am really an expert in understanding personality and stress. And I was trying to create, have you watched the movie Moneyball?
No, I don't have a Wi-Fi.
Oh, you don't have
I'm a third world country. No, I'm kidding. Yeah, so I'll watch it.
Moneyball is a story. It's a documentary. Brad Pitt acts on it, where they pick talent, the baseball team, on the basis of statistics. On the basis of statistics. So
isn't that like par for the course now?
It is par for the course. But what I was trying to do, and the work on my research, is on the basis that if success at the highest level of sport is 99% mental, 1% physical, if it's more cognitive, then surely we should be looking at cognitive markers in talent selection and not physiological markers. So I was trying to build a database to look at how psychometric cognitive markers respond to stress. And I've been doing this work for about 5 years, where I'm tracking personality markers.
Shayamal, English? It was a bit difficult. I'm watching Abhay sir's reaction. It's like too many words.
Yeah. So what I'm trying to explain is how an athlete performs under pressure is got nothing to do with how he holds a bat or skill.
Point.
It has everything to do with how his brain.
You can tell us how he'll handle the pressure situation.
Exactly. So that's my work. My work is that I'm able to now, through my research, tell you of these 10 athletes here, this guy has got the cognitive markers in place to respond to pressure the best. So will it mean that he will never get it wrong? The answer is no. But the probability of him getting it wrong is significantly smaller than anyone
Even Messi misses a penalty.
Exactly. But but the thing is that what is the probability of it? Everything in my world
Fair.
is probability.
Fair. I mean, fair. You can't do more than that.
Exactly.
But so what you're doing is you'll narrow it down and say these 3 guys are the best to take spot kicks or whatever.
Correct.
You know,
Spot
on
kick.
cricket.
So now with the football team, we've broken it down into, I now understand the types of personalities that perform best in certain positions. I also know that if a guy is in a specific position and the personality markers don't support that, we look at ways to move him into positions where he would perform a lot better, And like, for example, I'll give you some examples so it makes sense. Our forwards, we found the most successful forwards are highly, highly creative personalities. They're like artists. Now, if you think of you're an
Not
artist.
opportunists.
Opportunists, artists.
Same thing.
No,
Saukar again pointing to you.
They're not the same thing, but artists are always looking at that advantage. They're always looking at it. The second thing they're looking at is they have conviction in their ideas. They fundamentally believe it. And they can only execute what they believe in. That's the psychology of
It's like
an
a
artist.
narcissistic mindset.
It's
Huge self-belief, or is it just normal?
It's self-confidence bordering on arrogance,
Okay.
right? But it's needed for success. So if they don't have that marker, you can't be a very, very successful forward. You just can't.
Quick segue to Messi, because he seems such a. You were talking about Hashim. He's in that mold, soft-spoken, married to just one wife, no flamboyance outside the football field. Talks about his mother and things like that. He's almost like a boring personality.
100%. But if he could look boring, but the inner belief that he is the best person to do that job would be without conviction.
So is it a change in personality off the
It's
field
not
and
a
on
change
the
of
field?
personality. It's a belief system.
Oh.
It's a fundamental belief system that I am just.
So he knows how good he is, under all that modesty.
Yeah, the humility is cultivated by the ecosystem, by the people, all of that. You cultivate, you learn that skill, and we can talk a little bit about that. But the inner belief, the inner confidence, the inner psychology is something that has to be completely unwavering in that, And if you don't have that level of self-belief, that arrogance, that level of flamboyance,
Did Muhammad
that
Ali
you
have
can
that?
Yes, he did. 100%.
I would say that would be an example, right?
Yeah, 100%. When Muhammad Ali said, I think it was when did he go to the Rome Olympics?
1960.
1960.
Yeah.
Before he even went there, he was telling the journalists that I'm going to whip those cats up and down, and I'm going to return, turn pro, and be the best boxer in the world. You don't make a statement like that at your first Olympics before you've even rocked up there without the self-confidence bordering on arrogance of artistic creative
It works
work.
very well when you're one of the greatest of all time. But
He's
when
the
you're
greatest
not,
of
you
all
just
time
sound like a
now.
loudmouth,
Yeah.
Bro, I'm going to get that.
Yeah. But the beauty of it is that these geniuses
Yeah.
would go out on a limb saying it because they know one thing, that if they don't make it, everyone's forgotten it. No one's writing an article about the 50 things that someone said who didn't make it.
True.
They're writing an article about the one thing
time
he
it
said
actually
when it
scores.
actually
Yeah,
happened.
yeah, yeah.
Right. So these guys also know that. They're geniuses in a way that you cannot imagine. They connect random dots in a way that you cannot imagine. If you just give you one more example, I found like the best defenders in the country and the best defenders in a football
It's
team.
not just India. They're talking, not generally.
Generally across. The best defenders are people who are very analytical, very mathematical, very logical, very calculated. It's a completely different
So
psychology
the
to forward.
artistic guy is in the front. And the
very methodical
logical guy
is in
will
the
be-
back.
Yeah.
And they make the next difference. The midfielders we find
Can't make up his mind.
No. We're finding that in the midfielders we're getting a lot of people who have a very leadership type of personality. They need to take control of that. They're very, very charismatic. So charisma, conviction in the ability to lead, the ability to direct. These are the people that are in there. We find that the people who there's a certain personality type of very empathetic type people. Every now and then we find that. Scarily enough, in all of the professional footballers I've mapped, less than 1% of them actually have this empathetic personality. And there are few of them who are there, right, that have
So
it.
they're selfish bastards.
No. They're overly concerned about everybody. Highly empathetic to the emotions and feelings of everyone. That doesn't exist.
Okay.
Those people there.
So you're playing for a team, but you only think of yourself.
You may think about the team. You may want the team to win, but the innate primary driver is something else.
But you need that, right? Because each one has to be good at what they do, in
Yes,
a sense.
100%.
You can't really be thinking about the guy on the right.
Well, you can't be thinking, but you have to trust the guy on the right.
Yeah.
That's what team sport is. The ability
Works for cricket as well. This.
works for everybody.
Yeah.
The most important position in any sports team is the person standing next to you. In any sports team, and Sun Tzu explains this beautifully in a book
My
called.
God, now we've gone to China.
Yeah.
Jeez, man. You're too intellectual for my show. You have a younger brother you can send next time. Yeah.
Yeah. No, I was just saying that, he explains
art
it
of
beautifully.
war.
Art of war.
Yeah.
Because he's the most important person to trust is the person
Guy who
standing
has your
next
back
to you.
sort of thing.
Yeah, correct. Yeah.
Although in cricket it doesn't work, because sometimes you're at the square leg boundary and there's a spectator heckling you behind.
Yeah.
It's not exactly the same thing. Yeah,
But-
amazing.
But this is where we are, and that's what's happening on the football team. So I'm tracking these guys, helping them with all sorts of things.
What if you get an offer from like a more high-profile football team? Like say Brazil calls you and says, we want you.
I'll go. No two questions about it. Yeah.
The art of war.
Yeah. No, because
You're Hardik Pandya yourself, aren't you?
No. For two reasons. One is I'm a scientist, so the validity of the data I'm capturing is directly proportional to the quality of the players we're testing it on, So I'm always looking to run these assessments on people who are way, way better. Why? Because the validity becomes stronger. At the end of the day, that's what I'm trying to
It's
do.
amazing. So there's no bitterness growing up where you grew up, how you grew up, because you're now really like a global sort of,
sure.
proponent of your art.
Yeah.
And you're not even thinking left, right, or center. Wherever you go.
Yeah,
Next
correct.
and apply your
100%,
trade.
yeah.
What's the Mandela effect?
Yeah.
Where you sort of forgive and move on.
Forgive and forget and move on. Correct, yeah. And the thing is, I think sports become like that. In a cricket team, Cyrus, you play for 5 different coaches in a year. Hardik would play for 5 different coaches in 1 year.
Right.
You can't afford to not be that person who just, wraps up, shows up somewhere else, gives off 100%. Because who I work with, the Indian football team tomorrow could tell me, thank you very much, and then what do? You have to go, you have to move on, and that's what happens in sport. They
Maybe
teach.
fans don't understand that. I think the same reason why in the EPL you have guys who switch teams and then when they come back to, say, Anfield, having played for Liverpool, and then they get booed. Because for fans, it's a different deal altogether. It's like you said, the subject and the.
The fans, what is the difference between... So here's the interesting thing about psychology, is that if you like coffee and you walked down the road to buy a cup of coffee at the closest place to your recording studio and it was terrible, you'd probably go one more time. And it probably be true. And then you go one more time and you give him a chance. And then the third time you won't go. You're like, I'm done with this.
Yeah.
But your football team in your home country or your home city could lose for 10 years
And
in a
you
row.
still,
and
like
you still
Man
love them.
United!
Right, exactly. And you still love them. What is the difference between these two?
You tell me.
It's emotion. It's emotion. It's the emotional connection.
Why do we invest so much in the sport? I do it as a male. I've done it all my life. A big fan of West Indies cricket to begin with. Long story. So, all males, a lot of males, some females do this as well. Why do we invest so much? Is our lives empty? Why?
No,
Why do we
I
take
don't think
sports
it's
so
our lives
seriously?
empty. I think sport.
He didn't eat when Man City drew a game last week.
Yeah. I think we are invested in it because sport represents a type of courage that we all aspire for in
It's a
different
little guy living through the
correct.
whoever.
100%, yeah. And there's two polar opposites. The people who are loving sport are one, and then you get people who are not interested in sport but are hardcore business people.
Yeah.
Because also in business, it projects an astronomical type of audacity to have ambition. And that's why I'm a big fan, quite honestly. I coach a lot of CEOs. I'm a big fan of business because I fundamentally believe the constraints in sport are too rigid.
Look at the parallel we've just discussed, where Hardik goes from one team to another, which if I was in, say, Coke and I went to Pepsi,
correct,
you wouldn't have a problem with
No
that
one would
because
have a
then my
problem.
family would be very happy,
Exactly.
10% increment, blah, blah, blue, 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 position, status change, blah, blah, blue, blue, blue. It's the same damn thing.
Exactly.
But
100%.
yet we're judging because of this damn sports, which we own as a spectator.
Yes.
You know what I'm saying? When at the end of the day, it's just a job.
That's the thing. It is that. And and we get it's all emotion.
But we need that, right?
In psychology, they say there's two brains. There's an emotional brain and a rational brain. And 95% of decision making is emotional. And the 5% of rational, all it's doing is it's looking for reasons to support it. and we all go that.
So nice of him to actually say I have two brains when most people say I don't even have one. So I mean that's been really nice.
Yeah.
But we've run out of time. We've want you back so we can talk some more because there's so many. Every time you're telling me things, I just get distracted by everything else. But I mean it's a real pleasure and
Thank you so
what a
much.
job. Amazing. I mean really, and what a life you've led.
Thank you
So
very
interesting.
much.
I could write a book.
Beautiful. It's been.
Please write your book. I mean, there's years to go, I know, so there's more
Yeah.
to tell, but yeah, it's amazing.
It has-
What I think the story I get out of all this is no bitterness because we have no idea what apartheid was like.
Yeah.
This side of the fence. I mean, from privileged backgrounds in India, I have no idea what that is like. My biggest problem is always if a guy's looking at me in the gym. That's the closest I've got to racism.
Yeah. That can also be a very daunting space. I've been in.
That's an Indian proximity. Is that there with you guys? Because growing up here, proximity and Indians, we just don't get it.
Buddy,
right?
the place I used to feel most insecure in the gym was back in 2007 in Bombay Gymkhana.
Oh,
When
that's where I'm every
when you
morning.
guys used to lift.
Oh, really?
I
God.
was like, oh my God.
He doesn't like me.
I can't. My 5 kg dumbbell is not gonna cut it here.
Oh
know?
boy!
And
After
then-
all this,
I was like, oh
poor
my God.
Hardik, I'm the bad guy.
I'm saying it's intimidating, but
Go ahead and boo.
Yeah.
I know this has been wonderful, very captivating. Please come back and chat some
I
more.
would love that. I would
because,
absolutely love it.
I think we've got so much more to speak about, not just your life, but the world of sports around, which you've made better, I think. For a lot
Thank
of
you very
athletes.
much. It's an absolute pleasure speaking to you. Thank you so much.
Cheers. Thank you.
Thank you, buddy.